on here in the C Space Studio at CES 2024. I'm James Kotecki, joined by Florian Adamski, CEO, Omnicom Media Group. Welcome to the C Space Studio, and thank you for joining us.
Hey James, thank you so much for having me. It's an exciting time to be here.
Omnicom Media Group. What does the brand mean right now?
You know what, James? Right now it means navigating a very, very complex space on behalf of our clients. So Omnicom Media Group is a globally operating media agency. We work on behalf of hundreds of clients, spending an estimated $40 billion with us, and we help them making better, faster, and more efficient decisions as it comes to advertising. 2024 is going to be, and I know it's been said many, many times, but I think it is fair to say it one more time, it's going to be an inflection point. Believe it or not, after everything this planet has gone through over the past 2 to 3 years, it is yet another inflection point. So for example, next year we'll see, this year, 2024 really, we'll see global ad spend soar to above $1 trillion. $1 trillion. That is a watermark. That is completely new, and it just shows the responsibility that advertisers and agencies such as ours have to spend that money wisely, to make sure every dollar counts, but also do it in a way where we engage with consumers in an age where there is a lot of uncertainty of how to share their data, share private information. So really transforming the client and the customer's experience is what Omnicom Media Group is all about.
So $1 trillion ad spend, that must mean that every dollar has to compete harder, right, as well, for attention, for getting some kind of action from the consumer in order for them to go buy something or do something, right? Is it more increasingly competitive?
James, you're spot on. There was a time I started in this business in the late 90s actually, and at that time where there was about 50% of today's ad spend was being invested, and it was all about buying clout. Like who were the clients, who were the agencies that would amass the largest volumes of US dollars spent invested into advertising. They would get the better rates, the better deals from the media companies, and that was that. Now it is all about outsmarting, not outspending the competition. Even if you spend $1 billion, which some of the large advertisers, for example, in the United States would do, you are still confronted with a mountain of ad spend that's coming from the other side. So really dealing with this new environment, very much dealing with the deprecation of the cookie, finding new identity solutions. I just saw a stat the other day where they say there is now 111 identity solutions, which is a very confusing space for clients. That is our role, that is Omnicom Media Group's role to really help clients to navigate that space.
Does AI actually help you particularly, or the general person in this industry? Does AI actually help you outsmart anyone, or does it just create a new foundation that everybody is using, and you now have to continue to add your own human intelligence on top of that?
Another very, very smart question, and the answer is both. I think that AI in general terms, while I completely understand some of the implications and worries and concerns that society at large should be having, and we should be treating this topic very, very transparently and thoughtfully, AI empowers an agency like ourselves to do smarter work, faster work, leaner work, and more effective work. To your point though, if it up-levels everybody at the same level, it will create that new watermark that everybody then operates from. My hope would be is if that is the case, advertising, the $1 trillion spent, will be spent in ways that is more compelling for consumers. If that is the case, that would mean that the ROI, the return on that spend, would actually increase, which would make advertising at large more effective. That means future growth for the industry, and hopefully, as I said before, in a way that it is compelling to consumers.
Is there a certain speed at which you can evolve or follow the consumer's ability to handle increasing advertising or new kinds of advertising? In other words, if you put a bunch of money and a bunch of technology into advertising, but the consumer's not ready for that level of advertising, whatever it is, are you going to hit a wall? And I'm not even sure my question completely makes sense, but that's just what I was thinking when I was hearing what you
know what, James, it goes back to a term that you used in your last question, that was attention. So we see a huge attention deficit. We talk about the goldfish syndrome, right? And we know how people use social media feeds and how they scroll through advertising messages. So quite often there is less than a single second of attention for an ad. And again, that is part of the role that we have to make advertising matter, to make it relevant to the consumer. Having said that, and we talked about the cookie deprecation that is playing out as we speak, with the first percentage point of users being disabled to use third-party cookies on Chrome this last week, actually. We got to find smarter ways, more contextual ways, more meaningful ways to be connecting with consumers to make sense of all that ad spend, because if we don't do that, there's going to be a backlash, and then all that money ultimately will be spent with a lower ROI, the exact opposite of what I said a minute ago, and that will ultimately weigh down and on the advertising industry.
And isn't it challenging, though, to operate in an environment where you individually might realize, look, if we push this too far, we're going to get a backlash, but you're competing with everyone else to try and push it as far as you can, obviously, because as we said, it's an extremely competitive environment.
It is a balance to strike. I mean, trust me, if I told you I started in this industry a number of years ago, if somebody had told me that by 2024 we would be seeing that $1 trillion spent, I would have thought that is not achievable. So on the one hand, I see that as a positive, because it goes to show that this industry at large has growth momentum, but on the other hand, there is this responsibility and really the accountability that we have to avoid the backlash. So I think we, as an industry, need to come together, and that is media agencies, very much the clients that spend the money, the media owners, the publishers, and the industry bodies, to define what good and effective advertising actually looks like, how much exposure we want to bring to a consumer before it is simply too much, because too much of anything is just a poison there is no antidote against.
We talked about AI. I'd like to go a little deeper on that. Can you tell me about maybe specifically, for an individual employee, they open their laptop, what are they doing differently with AI within your agency right now? Any interesting use cases you want to highlight?
Yeah, so there is not a single area of our business that is not touched upon by AI. It is the way how we operate, how we work internally, and I'll come back to your question in just a moment as it relates to what does it look like for an employee, but it is also how we make better, faster, more effective decisions on behalf of our clients. So for example, what we internally call channel planning and budgeting tools. So how is a dollar actually spent? Where's the next dollar going to go? Which channel? Is it TV? Is it online? Is it print? And so on and so forth. All these things have been machine learning driven for a long period of time, and generative AI is just going to increase that level of data-driven marketing. That's the client-facing side of it. Internally, the work that we do will become more effective by giving our employees the ability to use data in a way and in a volume at scale that they previously had not been able to. So they'll be able to come to decisions much, much faster and quicker and give recommendations to clients within minutes that would have taken days before. Ultimately, you said, how does it look like for an employee? And I don't want to copy from someone else, but I think one of the largest software companies in the world, just last week, they made a major pivot on how to redesign their keyboard after 30 years by introducing the Copilot button. And it is very, very similar at Omnicom Media Group. So our people have access to something we call Omni Assist, which is essentially our open operating system, housing all of our tools, capabilities, and applications that enable people to do their job, and they have access to the central repository of AI-driven tools.
You mentioned earlier that if someone had told you at the beginning of your career we'd reach $1 trillion in ad spend, you would have found that implausible. Now I want to ask you, is there a prediction that you have for the future that other people might think is implausible, but that you really believe?
You know, a lot of people predict a lot of things, so I'm very careful with these things.
That's what we're all about here in C Space.
That is true. Now look, we talk about AI a little bit and how it changes the way people work. I think interestingly there is this perception that AI is ultimately going to reduce and even destroy employment, and that many people will lose their jobs over it. And that is not what I believe. I believe we need to be more effective, and I want AI to make us quicker, better, faster. Having said that, you talked about the new foundation. I think I called it a watermark. So I think what AI will really do is to help us make certain commoditized decisions faster. At the same time, people will be moving upstream in terms of making better strategic decisions, and I think there's going to be an entirely new space of professional young people moving into these spaces. So overall, I don't think that overall employment will suffer from AI, but it will shift dramatically. And I know that there are a lot of people at this conference who would quite heavily disagree with that statement, because they believe that overall, especially in the ad sector, in the agency sector, employment is going to plummet over the next few years.
Well, Flo Adamski, thank you so much for having this conversation. We have to have you back. Omnicom Media Group, we really appreciate it.
James, thank you so much. That was awesome.
And thank you so much for joining us here in the C Space Studio at CES 2024. I'm James Kotecki, and so many more great conversations are just ahead. We are live. Don't go anywhere.